don't criminalize the whole community while we are the victims of crime and the victims of those police that go over the line.
Stop and Frisk works. It is a policy, it's the only policy that I know of that will get the gun off the street before the shooting happens.
This is the right thing to do, period.
We need to get this done on a long-term basis, not this kind of a stopgap measure.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thanks so much for joining us this Monday evening, June 18th. Now, a lot of our program is going to focus on an issue we dealt with in depth last week, Stop and Frisk. First, we're going to have coverage of yesterday's silent march against the policy, as well as our interview with Reverend Al Sharpton. And next, we're going to have my pretty entertaining interview with New York City Councilman Peter Vallone. He's a firm supporter of Stop and Frisk. And later, we're going to move on to another pressing issue of the day. And I'm talking about immigration and certainly a separation between President Obama and also Mitt Romney. Is it fair to call Obama's executive order the Daydream Act that some of his critics have? Was it foolish of him to think that people wouldn't see this as nakedly political, even if it was something that a lot agree with? Now, it's all coming up on this edition of RFL, but let's begin first with Stop and Frisk and our own Kim Langel. She was at the silent march yesterday. She's in first position tonight with an update. Kim?
That's right, Rich. Well, thousands turned out yesterday for a silent march down Fifth Avenue to protest the NYPD's Stop and Frisk policy. Demonstrators say the practice is illegal and humiliating. But New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg and Police Commissioner Ray Kelly says the program gets guns off the street. Among the most vocal opponents of the policy is Reverend Al Sharpton, the founder and president of the National Action Network. I spoke with him at the protest yesterday.
The goal of a Christian is to assume a Christ mentality.
Preaching to a packed congregation, Reverend Al Sharpton never specifically mentioned the word Stop and Frisk to parishioners at the First Corinthian Baptist Church Sunday in Harlem. He talked about two things specifically. One, what he called responsibility of the black man, and two, the late Trayvon Martin and his father, Tracy, both which Sharpton said had significance to Father's Day.
I think that it ties in because I think that we must hold ourselves accountable for crime. We must come to common ground to fight crime, but at the same time we cannot be depicted as all criminal. So at one level you can't tell people to correct their behavior, but at another level they be prejudged. And that's what I told the mayor when we met this week. Our problem is the racial profiling part of it and how we can remove that from it so we can all fight crime together.
Sharpton says the challenge facing the city and its Stop and Frisk policy is that it sees all minorities as criminals. To get the point across, Sharpton led a march from 110th Street in Harlem to the doorsteps of Mayor Bloomberg's townhouse on the Upper East Side of 79th Street.
We are saying today with a silent march is don't criminalize the whole community while we are the victims of crime and the victims of those police that go over the line.
The call to end the NYPD's controversial policy on Stop and Frisk has been growing louder, not just from victims like Nicholas Pert, who's been stopped 5 times, twice on his own block, once with a gun pointed at him.
I was in shock, couldn't believe it. It's a psychological cost that comes along with it, a mental adjustment that just is something that, we will be subjected to.
The call to end the current policy is also coming from unlikely sources like these. Former police officers who say quotas exist.
Officers feel this enormous pressure from headquarters because they're giving them these goal-oriented tasks. They're saying, I want so many numbers. And they're checking them every single day to make sure they hit those targets.
We're being forced to arrest innocent people. We're being forced. Everything was about numbers, 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 numbers. They wanted X amount of summonses, they wanted X amount of arrests, they wanted Stop and Frisk, they wanted everything, and they were obsessed with the number.
Suspended NYPD patrol officer Adil Polango testified in court that he captured this recording during roll call inside the 41st Police Precinct in the Bronx.
I want 250 to see something. I want a ghost town. I want to be able to echo from one end of the street to the other. You understand? That's what I want in a perfect world. So that's your mission. Guys need college, need activity, there you go. They gotta get you moved.
250s refer to stop and frisk, and C summons refer to other violations. With close to 7,000 New Yorkers stopped last year, mainly minorities, according to the NYPD's own data, Reverend Sharpton says he wants to see a new policy. In his words, one that's not based on quotas and one that's not based on race.
We're hearing more about police quotas. Do you think the worst has come out, or do you think there's more black eyes for the NYPD?
I wouldn't doubt that there's more to come out, and I think the pressure of quotas exacerbates stop and frisk.
City officials we spoke to yesterday at the march said the current policy isn't only a civil rights issue, that it's also a financial issue. We caught up with New York City Comptroller John Liu, who says the practice is costing the city so much money in settlements and judgments that his office has decided to fight against the policy.
We are seeing an increase in claims against the NYPD. $74 million a year 10 years ago. It's now mushroomed to something much closer to $200 million a year. And now a federal judge has granted class action status to people who are suing the city and the police. This is a problem that is not only an issue of civil rights and equality, but it's also going to become a financial problem for the city. So it's very serious. What we need to do is look at other cities that have employed real solutions, real strategies that have actually cut down on crime.
Comptroller Liu says as the controversy continues to heat up, more and more is being paid out in claims. Last year's amount of about $180 million could actually be higher this year. And Rich, I bet you noticed that Al Sharpton was wearing a black hoodie during that march.
Well, the numbers, whether it's the number of stops and the number of payouts, keep going up every single year since this policy was put in place. All right, Kim, thank you.